He's a country music outlaw.
Well, hello there.
For decades, Willie has entertained fans with his unique Texas twang that's crossed all musical boundaries.
Yesterday is dead and gone. Tomorrow's not a sun.
68-year-old Willie Nelson plays to sold-out crowds wherever he goes. He has a faithful following with fans of all ages. On tour nearly 200 days of the year. I caught up with the redheaded stranger after a 2.5-hour concert at Stubbs in downtown Austin. Our interview took place on his bus at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Being on this bus, this is your home, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Are you here more than you are at the ranch?
Yeah. I spend much more time here than I do anywhere, really.
It's personalized, too. I see all the photos around here. And what is life like on a bus half the year, at least, or more?
Something somewhere between a spaceship and a submarine, if that makes any sense at all.
But you have everything you need, don't you?
Sure. Yeah, and there's there's a Cracker Barrel over here, and whatever you need.
Growing up in Abbott, Texas, Willie and his sister Bobby Lee were raised by their grandparents. Back then, it would have been hard to believe Willie had big time stamped on his forehead. Willie said from the moment he heard music on the radio, he was hypnotized.
You mentioned your boyhood. Now, you grew up in Abbott, Texas,
Yes.
in central Texas, a small town, with your grandparents.
Yes.
What's your first memory of music as a child?
Well, they were music teachers and students at the same time. They were taking correspondence courses from a music institution in Chicago. So I could hear them doing their lessons every night. They'd sit around in the kitchen table with a kerosene lamp, and the walls are thin, so my sister and I could hear them practicing their music. So it was some of the first things I heard.
Do you remember the very first song you ever wrote?
Yeah.
What was it?
No, I can't tell you, but I do remember.
Was it good?
No, it was horrible.
What about your first performance on stage? Remember that?
I do. It was a little less horrible, but I was about 5 years old, and my grandmother had written this poem, and I was to do it. It was one of those all-day singing, dinner on the ground type things in the tabernacle, and there was a program, so I had on a little white sailor suit with red trims on it. And I was starting to recite my poem, and I started picking my nose, and my nose started bleeding. So it started bleeding all over my little white sailor suit. And so I would hold one side of my nose that was bleeding, and my poem was, so what are you looking at me for? I ain't got nothing to say. If you don't like the looks of me, you can look some other way. And I haven't had stage fright ever since then.
You started out at the worst and got better, huh? Every performance gets a little
everything was better, yeah.
That's a great story. How did you get started then in professional music from the stage as a little boy?
Well, I started playing there was a blacksmith in town, and it was John Raycheck. He had 21 kids, and they all played some kind of musical instrument, including him, and it was a Bohemian polka band. So he needed a guitar player, and he knew I needed a couple of bucks. So when I was about 9 years old, he gave me a job in his Bohemian polka band, John Raycheck. And we played in, I lived in Abbott, and the closest town where there was beer was at West, Texas, which is 6 miles south, in McClellan County, which was wet, and you could buy beer. Not liquor. If you wanted liquor, you had to go further south down to Perry, which I found out about that later.
After you were 9?
Yeah, after I was 9.
How long have you been making music now?
Well, really ever since I can remember, I started writing poems when I was 5 and learning chords on a guitar when I was 6. So all the way back as far as I can remember.
It must be so overwhelming to have made music your whole life and still at your age be able to pack the crowds in.
Still doing it.
It's overwhelming, it must be.
It's at least whelming.
Willie worked hard to become a star. In the 60s, he was writing hit songs for others.
Crazy, crazy for feeling so lonely.
He penned Patsy Cline's signature tune.
I'm crazy, crazy for feeling so blue.
But you ended up writing country western songs there in Nashville, because I understand you wrote Crazy for Patsy Cline.
Well, but when I went to Nashville, I had a lot of songs that I had already written, and in Texas, and Crazy, and Funny How Time Slips Away, and Nightlife was 3 of the songs that I had written while I lived in Houston the year before I went to Nashville.
Why'd you leave Nashville and come back home to Texas?
My house burned, and I was working a lot in Texas. Most of the places that I worked was clubs either here in New Mexico, Oklahoma. And I tried going around doing world tours, and I just wasn't well enough known to make any money at it. So I decided to come back to Texas now that my house had burned. It was a good reason to come on back. And it turned out to be a real good decision.
Did you lose valuable things? Your guitar, I know you've had your guitar with you a long time. Obviously, you didn't lose that in the fire.
No, I managed to save that.
Is your guitar special? Do you like B.B. King's has Lucille? Does your guitar have a name?
Trigger is the name of my guitar.
How long has Trigger been with you?
About 40 years now.
Do you feel lost without Trigger?
Oh, I would, sure.
Yeah. You were here in Austin in the 70s during the heyday of the music scene, Armadillo World Headquarters. Talk about that a little bit, because for those folks who didn't live in Austin during that time, everybody talks about how wonderful it was.
It was wonderful. It was a very exciting time. There was a lot of young people interested in country music, and because of differences in length of hair or whatever, it wasn't that easy for the young college kids who were hanging around Austin then to find a place where they could hear Hank Williams or, you know, at the time Commander Cody and Emmylou Harris and Gramble Parsons. All those guys were just getting started and had real hot bands, and Flying Burrito Brothers, and all those places were playing to the young college kids who would love to hear Waylon or somebody, but they didn't know where they could safely go and do it. So the Armadillo World Headquarters turned out to be the spot where everybody started coming together.
That's because during the 70s, Austin's live music scene was centered at the Armadillo World Headquarters. The rustic music venue featured some of today's top performers. And of course, Willie was there.